My name is Charles. I'm 62 years old, and a question has been with me since the day it was said. How does a daughter look at her own father and say that he is too old to travel with the family, that you should just stay at home? Taking care of what, by the way, I built myself. Maybe you've felt it too, that twinge in your chest when you realize that for those you helped the most, you became just a burden. It seems that everything you have done, every sacrifice, every night of sleep, every bill paid in silence, loses value overnight. As if affection had a deadline, as if old age was synonymous with invisibility. Today I'm going to tell you the real story of how this phrase changed my life. You're too old to fly with us, just take care of the house. You will understand how a father betrayed by his own daughter turned the tables with dignity and taught the most expensive lesson anyone can learn. Do not underestimate the silence of those who have already done everything for you, because sometimes the biggest answer comes when you simply disappears. But before we dive into the heart of this story, I need you to know something. When my daughter told me I was too old to fly them to Hawaii, I thought it was just one of those phrases said without thinking. But it wasn't. It was the beginning of a very well put-together plan, where I would be removed from the house, sent to an asylum, and everything I built with my wife would be transformed into an anticipated inheritance. But they forgot one detail. I was listening, and when they returned from their dream trip, they found only silence. And a sold sign on the front lawn. If you've come this far, it's because this story may speak to some part of you too. I know there are many of us, fathers, grandfathers, men who have given everything, and who were once treated as if they were worthless. So if you can, leave your like, subscribe to the channel, and share this video with someone who needs to hear it, because telling this story is not easy. But knowing that you are there, listening with your heart, gives me the strength to continue. We will go together until the end. You will understand why. That morning, Lauren arrived full of energy. I was sitting in my favorite armchair in the living room, reading an old newspaper just to pass the time. She came in laughing, her hair still wet from the shower, and a bunch of colorful leaflets in her hands. "Dad, you won't believe it, we did it," she said, scattering the papers on the coffee table as if they were golden tickets to a prize. Brad came right behind with a satisfied smile and his cell phone in hand, showing photos of a resort with an infinity pool and an ocean view. "Look at this here, Dad. Maui, 4 bedrooms, private beach access, spa for Margaret. Paradise." She could barely contain herself with excitement. I looked at the pamphlet. I confess that I was enchanted. I've never been to Hawaii. I never traveled anywhere after Sarah left. Everything I built stayed within these walls. The last time I took a plane was with her, on a trip to visit our friends in Boston back in the 90s. I smiled, trying to keep up with her joy. "This sounds wonderful. When are we going?" She stopped. The smile was still on her face, but her eyes no longer matched the joy of the tone. "Father," she said, and put her hand on my arm with a rehearsed kindness. "You're too old for this kind of thing now, standing for so long, the time zone. We thought maybe you'd better get some rest, you know? Stay here taking care of the house. You love gardening, don't you?" I didn't answer at the time. I felt like I had heard it wrong. Too old to be with my family, too old to live a joy with my daughter and grandchildren. Brad added without even looking up from the screen, "Yes, Charles. We go with my parents. Walter and Margaret are super excited. It has always been their dream to see the sunset over the Pacific. It's going to be a family trip." That word, family, it sounded like a razor slowly passing through my chest. I was still there, sitting with my hands on my knees, my whole body warm and at the same time cold. I just shook my head. I get it. Lauren walked past me again and continued arranging the papers. "But look on the bright side, Dad. You'll have the whole house to yourself. You can rest, watch your programs, do the crossword puzzles you like." And then the penny dropped. The trip was already all planned. The in-laws, who barely greeted me in the kitchen, were on the script. The rooms had already been shared, the resort booked, the flight purchased, and only now, just at this moment, was she informing me, not asking, that I would be left out. I got up, went to the window, and looked at the garden. The grandchildren had left toys scattered on the lawn. The same lawn that I've mowed every week since they came to live here 5 years ago. I looked at that metal swing that I had installed with my own hands. The bikes leaning against the garage. Everything there had my sweat on it. Behind me I heard Margaret laughing. "I hope there is a dinner option without seafood, right? Walter, remember how sick you were last time?" They laughed. The house was full of voices, except mine. No. There are moments in life when we realize that we are no longer part of the story we helped to write, as if they had turned the page but left you behind, between the notes at the bottom. If you've ever felt this, comment below with "I've lived it" or "It's true." Sometimes a comment from you can welcome those who are going through the same thing. I returned to the living room, still silent. Lauren asked if I wanted to see the photos of the restaurant they had chosen for the welcome dinner. "It's the kind that Mom would have loved, right, Dad?" I shook my head again. Yes, Sarah would have loved it, and she would have made a point of including me. Sarah never accepted that anyone was left aside, much less inside her own home. By this time, the silence was heavier than any answer I could give, and I realized one thing. They didn't. They didn't notice my absence in that conversation, nor the break in my voice. They were too busy planning their perfect vacation. But I was listening. And what I heard in that room was still just the beginning, because that night something even more painful was said. And that's when everything changed. That same evening, the dinner table was set as usual. Roast chicken, puree, salad, and that rice that Lauren always said was the only one I made better than her. The grandchildren were on the couch, glued to the TV. Brad spoke loudly, as always, and the in-laws argued among themselves whether they would take medicine for nausea or not. Lauren struck up a conversation looking at her cell phone screen, confirming reservations, checking schedules. No one noticed that I ate in silence, without looking up from the plate. And no one asked anything. No, "And you, Dad?" No gesture. They just talked. They talked a lot. The flight is Sunday 6 a.m. You have to be at the airport by 4 a.m., so we're going to leave Saturday night and sleep in a hotel near Miami. I chewed slowly, trying to understand when they started planning all this without even mentioning me. "Margaret will take the room facing the sea," Lauren said. "Brad's daddy with the other. We will stay with the children in the middle suite, and it has an extra room if they need a massage or rest." I stood there inside. Extra room. For massage, but not for me. Brad then added, laughing, with a sip of wine, "And Charles will be able to stay here resting. No noise, no mess, just him and the backyard bird." His laugh was dry. The eyes did not meet mine. Walter, the father-in-law, commented, "By the way, after we return, we could think about modernizing that garage, huh? A gourmet space fits easily." Lauren, distracted, replied, "True. And those living room windows too. The house needs a new face. If we are going to sell, it values well." It was there that my fork fell on the plate. He tapped with a dry metallic sound, which made Margaret stop talking. I smiled. I faked a slight spasm in my hand. "Old age, right?" I joked, with a short laugh. Everyone laughed, a little disconcerted. But no one undid what they said. No one turned back. The words remained in the air, raw, unpunished. The house. My house. It became their project. My living room, my garden, the garage I built with Sarah on the weekends, brick by brick. Now it was an old thing that needs to be modernized. I finished eating and went upstairs to the bedroom. I didn't cry. I just sat in the armchair and stared out the window. The night outside was beautiful. The full moon fell on the roof of the neighbors. The sound of a dog barking in the distance, nothing that denounced what was going on here. And then, from the top of the stairs, I listened. Brad spoke to Lauren, thinking no one was listening. We need to get this sorted out soon, Law. He's too old to stay here. This house cannot be locked in his name. When we come back, we'll solve it. The phrase entered me like a nail, not because it is unexpected, but because it is real, because it is definitive. It was not an impression. It was flat. It was a decision. I went down the stairs very slowly, pretending to be thirsty. I went to the kitchen, stirred the cups. They greeted me as if nothing had been said, and I as if I had heard nothing. The truth is that that night I didn't go to sleep. I stayed awake, sitting looking at Sarah's portrait on the wall, thinking, listening to everything, feeling everything, and deep down, preparing what no one there imagined. Because they think that the old only listens, it just obeys, but they forget that a silent man is not a weak man. It's just someone who knows how to wait for the right time. And that night, I knew that time was coming. Want to know what else I discovered before the trip? It will hurt, but it needs to be told. 2 days after that dinner, the sun had already receded when I heard hurried footsteps and whispers in the room. I was upstairs, as I always do at night, but at that time something called me, a feeling perhaps. The wood of the stairs creaked lightly under my bare feet. I didn't turn on any lights. I went down slowly and stopped behind the sliding door, the one that separates the hallway from the living room. I didn't make any noise, and it was there, with my ear glued to the cold wood, that I heard the sentence. "Sunrise Bay has already confirmed the spot," Lauren said, her voice low, almost professional. "It will be great for him. There is medical follow-up, meals on time, people his age to talk to, and we solve everything calmly." My heart beat dry. Sunrise Bay. I knew it. A center for the elderly almost 2 hours from here. It was beautiful on the outside, but it was a place where the children visit once at Christmas, and then they disappear. "The entrance is already early," she continued. "I spoke with the coordinator and explained everything, that he is a widower, that he is tired, that he needs care. They said they can welcome us the week after we return." Brad joined the conversation soon after. "Perfect, because I've already agreed with Zachary, that broker who did the deal with my father's cousin. As soon as it is installed, we put this house up for sale. The market is hot. This here won't take long to come out." Walter gave a muffled laugh. "This house will be ours. Finally." Margaret, in that always sweet voice but poisoned with selfishness, added, "He won't even notice. You'll think it's a walk." For a second I lost my breath. It wasn't anger. It was a strange kind of grief. I mourn for still being alive, but being treated as a body in preparation. The house I built with Sarah, the home where my daughter took her first steps, where I buried our dog in the backyard, where I wrote my love notes to my wife. It has become the object of negotiation, a burden to be taken out of the way. I took a deep breath. His chest burned, as if he were caught in a tight embrace of pain, but I didn't cry. I just listened. I swallowed word for word. They didn't know that the old man of the house still heard, that the old man of the house was still there. I walked back down the corridor with firm but silent steps. I climbed the stairs without looking back. And when I got to my room, I closed the door slowly, sat on the edge of the bed and stared at Sarah's portrait once again. There, in the cruelest silence I have ever lived, something inside me changed. The pain turned to a stone. The hurt turned to clarity. I was no longer the father who gave in. He was no longer the old man who expected gratitude. That night was the turning point. From then on, I stopped being part of their plan, and I started writing mine, because if they thought I was weak, they were about to find out the price of underestimating those who never let them lack anything. But before any reaction, I needed to face another truth, and it was hidden in an old notebook, inside the drawer of my dresser. You will understand. And it will hurt even more. That same night, after hearing everything I shouldn't, I went back to my room, sat on the edge of the bed and opened the dresser drawer. At the back, under some old letters from Sarah and some receipts kept by old man Stubbornness, was the brown hardcover notebook, The one where I write down everything that comes out of my pocket since Lauren and Brad came to live with me. It's not out of mistrust. It never was. I have always been organized. And when my daughter came in that night 5 years ago, crying, saying that they were broke, that Brad had made some wrong investments and lost his job, I just said, come. No questions asked. Sarah was still alive at the time, but she was already struggling with the disease, and even so she looked at me and smiled when she saw her granddaughter on her lap. It was the right thing to do. That's what family is for. At least that's what I believed. I opened the notebook slowly, as if opening a wound. The first pages had small records. January 2018, supermarket, 267.43s. February, Brad's car repair, 1,280 kozus. Then a flood of bills: energy, water, girls' school, health insurance, streaming subscription, new tablet, washing machine repair, school trip, and none of them were mine, all in their name. I remember that, a year later, Brad lost money with online sports betting. He came home white, crying, saying that he was being threatened by dangerous people. Lauren was in tears. I went to the bank the same day. I made the withdrawal and delivered it to him. "Pay and close it forever," I said. He hugged me and said that one day he would pay me. We never touched on the subject again. I kept turning the pages. Each leaf was a memory, a resignation of mine, a choice made by them, supported by me. And now they wanted to take me out of the house as if I were an old piece of furniture, a nuisance, planning to push me into an asylum, sell the place I built with the woman I loved, and go on with life like I'm a settled burden. I looked up and looked at the frame on the nightstand. The photo of Sarah smiling in our backyard, with a straw hat and a basket of freshly picked lemons. That image always brought me peace, but at that time, it brought sadness. I remembered when she said to me, "You always take care of everyone, Charles, but don't forget to take care of yourself too." And I forgot. I forgot about myself for years. I gave everything, and now they were about to take away my right to exist within my own history. I picked up the pen that was stuck in the spine of the notebook. I took a deep breath, and, for the first time, I wrote something that was not a number. In firm letters I wrote, "They don't deserve it." The hurt became a weight in the stomach, but along with it, something new was born. A silence stronger than crying, a kind of clarity that only comes when you realize you've reached the limit. And look, I'm here, opening my heart, telling this story like I've never told anyone. If you're listening, if it's touching you in any way, leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I still have a lot of things in store to tell you, because this here, it's not just about me. It's about every person who has given so much that they forgot their name along the way. I closed the notebook and rested my hands on it, as if holding a secret for the last time. I looked at the house in silence. Each wall had a story, each piece of furniture a piece of us. But now all this was treated as junk by those who had to honor. That's when a question shot through me like an arrow. What if they were already trying to sell the house under the hood? I needed to find out. And he needed to act. What I found later, it would change everything. The next day, very early before anyone went down to the kitchen, I locked myself in the office. It was a small room where Sarah used to write Christmas cards. Inside, everything still smelled like her. I picked up the phone and calmly dialed the number written down on a flyer Brad had forgotten on the table. Zachary Allen, a real estate agent, specialist in traditional Winter Park properties. The same thing they commented on that night, thinking I wasn't listening. He answered the third call, young, polished voice. "Good morning, Zachary speaking." I took a deep breath and got into the role. "Good morning, my name is Charles Parker. I have a property here on Maple Street, an old, well-kept house. I'm considering selling and wanted to understand the market values." He responded enthusiastically, suggesting a visit that same week. "Tomorrow morning, maybe." I promised to be discreet. We closed the time. I wrote down his full name on a piece of paper, folded it and kept it in my shirt pocket. Then I went to prepare breakfast, as I did every day. When Lauren came into the kitchen and gave me a kiss on the forehead, I complimented her on the new dress she was wearing. Brad came soon after, asking if he could use the car to buy a new suitcase. I said yes. Margaret showed up complaining about the pain in her knee, and I listened carefully. On the outside, I was the same. But inside, something in me was moving with precision, a kind of icy clarity. They were so sure of my weakness that they did not realize that I had already risen. That night, over dinner, I sat with them as usual. Lauren showed the schedule of the trip, said she was excited about the Hawaiian dinner that the resort prepared upon arrival. Brad laughed out loud, telling him that his father was practicing phrases in Hawaiian to impress the waiters. I ate slowly, listening to everything. And I even praised the choice of hotel. It will be good for you. Enjoy it. And rest assured I'll take care of the house properly. Lauren smiled. I knew I could count on you, Dad. I noticed how that count on you always meant leave everything on your back. But I kept the smile. I even joked that I was going to take advantage of the days alone to work in the basement. There is too much there. Time to empty. Brad agreed, saying that organization is always good. Little did he know what I really intended to organize. While they talked about the beaches, the walks, the photos they wanted to take, I looked at every corner of the house. The room where Sarah danced with me to Sinatra, the hallway where Lauren learned to walk, the guest room that became Brad's room without ever asking me. Each room had a memory, and now it would have a destination. I had no money left. I didn't have the strength to fight. But there was something they no longer had: control. And all I needed, it was time and silence. What Zachary would say to me the next day would completely change my plan, but what I found in the attic that very night, that almost made me give up. Almost. On the eve of the trip, the house seemed like a showcase of enthusiasm. Open suitcases on the floor, lively voices mixed with the sounds of zippers and rushed checklists. The kitchen was a mess, but no one seemed to care. I went there with the excuse of getting a glass of water, just to see it up close. Lauren typed something on her cell phone, seemed to coordinate boarding with her in-laws. Brad was screaming from above, asking where the floral shirt was. The younger girl ran down the hallway with sunglasses, saying she was a stylish Hawaiian. And there I was, standing in the corner, like a memory hanging on the wall. It was then that Lauren came to me with a plastic, half-automatic smile. He put his hand on my shoulder and said, "Dad, I left the emergency contacts glued to the refrigerator, okay? There's Elizabeth's phone number next door, in case you need someone to help you." I nodded, thanking him. On the outside, calm. Inside, the phrase burned me like embers. In case you need someone to help you. It was as if I were an invalid, a frail old man who can barely spend a week at home unsupervised. The same house where I supported 3 generations. The same one where Sarah called me Fortress. Brad, unaware of what she had just said, walked into the room carrying a backpack and added, laughing, "Oh, and just don't try to fix anything while we're gone, Charles. Call someone. We don't want an accident, right?" Laughed. Me too, but it was an empty, mechanical laugh. If they had looked into my eyes at that moment, they might have seen the crack open. But no one looked. No one ever looks. The next morning, they hurried downstairs. Walter complained about the time. Margaret said that the Uber driver was already honking his horn outside. Lauren gave me a quick kiss on the cheek. "Be well, Dad. We send photos, okay?" I waved my hand. Brad raised his thumbs. The grandchildren shouted, "Bye, Grandpa!" without stopping to look at their own cell phones. I stood at the door watching each one get into the car. The bags were placed in the trunk in a hurry, and then they left. Muffled laughter, window closed, car disappearing at the curve of Maple Street. I closed the door firmly, but this time it didn't hurt. Not at all. I took a deep breath, looked at the empty room, and a different silence invaded me. It was not the silence of loneliness. It was that of freedom. I walked over to the couch and sat down calmly. I observed every detail of the house. The table where Sarah and I had breakfast on Sundays. The carpet she chose herself on a trip to Savannah. The wall where Lauren took her first steps. Everything there was still standing, everything resisted, and now I would resist too. No, there are moments when we think we are being left behind, but in fact, it's when we start to walk alone. And if you've made it this far, stay with me until the end, because what comes next, no one, not even them, imagined I would be able to do. I went to the kitchen. I tore the paper taped to the fridge with the emergency contacts. I threw it in the trash. I turned on the radio. The voice of an old jazz filled the room, and for the first time in a long time, there were no shouts, no requests, no judgmental looks. Just me, just my house. It is a plan about to get off the ground. What would Zachary reveal to me that morning would start the game, and this time I would be the one who would move the pieces. The day after they left, the silence of the house embraced me like an old friend. I made my coffee as usual, but I didn't sit down at the table. Instead, I put the house key in my pocket, grabbed the briefcase with the documents I'd already sorted out, and made my way to the front gate. Zachary arrived on time, as promised, in a modern car, with a light blazer and a smile that tried to mix friendliness with efficiency. "Mr. Parker, nice to meet you in person," he said, extending his hand. We tightened it up. I took him into the living room. He looked around, impressed. "This house has a soul. You can feel it." I just nodded, without emotion. "Let's get straight to the point," I said. I opened the folder on the dining room table and showed everything. Deed in my name, maintenance history, taxes up to date, tax assessment report. "I want to sell in 10 days, in sight, with a small discount if necessary." He widened his eyes. This is unusual, but you seem well prepared." "I am." He analyzed the papers carefully, took pictures of everything. "This here speeds up any process." I nodded. "I don't want to decorate to sell. I want to sell to disappear." The phrase came out of me with a coldness that even scared me. Zachary understood. He was smart. "I have a contact in an investment fund. They are looking for well-located properties like this one. They pay fast. They don't make drama." At the end of that afternoon, he called me confirming his interest. 3 days later, 2 men in suits made a discreet visit. They looked at the land, the structure of the house, took pictures of the backyard, the windows and the facade. The next day, I received the proposal. Fair value, a little below the market as expected, but the payout would be immediate. I accepted without hesitation. I signed the pre-contract with firm hands, and that night I sat in the living room again, but this time with a cardboard box next to it. I started packing everything, one by one. My grandchildren's toys, Lauren's clothes thrown in the guest closet, electronics scattered around the house, Brad's books that he said he was going to read and never opened, everything carefully folded, packaged, labeled. I rented a small warehouse in Sanford, paid 6 months in advance, and took everything there. I did it alone, in silence. The warehouse clerk asked if I needed help. I said no. He looked at me as if he saw an abandoned man, and he wasn't wrong. But it was not pity that I wanted. It was respect. Each box placed in the van was like taking a weight off the chest, as if I was cleaning myself of them, layer by layer. When the last toy was put away, I sat in the car seat and stood there, looking at the entrance to the warehouse, taking a deep breath. Nope. There comes a point in life when you stop expecting regrets from others and start quietly giving back everything that was taken from you. Not to hurt, but to heal. If you've ever felt this, that mute cut that comes from ingratitude, comment below with "I understand you," or "It's true." Because there are things that we only understand when we live. I returned home in the evening. The room was empty, but not sad. Their absence finally left room for what I really needed: peace. The paperwork was moving fast. Zachary was amazed at the efficiency. "I've never seen someone so calm selling everything." I said, "It's just that I've lost everything before." Now I'm just closing the accounts. Each day the idea of leaving grew as a relief, but before leaving, I needed to leave something behind. One last gesture, something that spoke louder than any speech. And what I wrote in that letter, they will never forget it. The apartment in Altamonte Springs was small but honest. 1 bedroom, 1 narrow living room, American kitchen. It is located in a low building overlooking a quiet square. When I got there, for the first time in a long time, I felt something that hadn't visited me in years: lightness. There was no child's mess, no loud voices, no dirty dishes that weren't mine. Every corner was mine. Every step made sense. The only thing I brought with me from the old house was Sarah's photo. I put it on the nightstand next to the window. Every morning I open the curtains and let the light touch her face. I stand there drinking my coffee, remembering how she used to say that new beginnings only hurt when we insist on carrying too much luggage. On the 4th day of silence, the cell phone rang. Number with DDD outside. Answered. It was Lauren. "Hi, Dad. Is everything okay out there?" Her voice was light, excited, noise of waves in the background, people laughing, children screaming. "Everything in order, daughter," I replied calmly. She began to tell about the dinner by the sea, that the resort was even more beautiful than it looked in the photos, that Walter and Margaret were delighted with the drinks served in pineapples, that Brad had befriended the manager. I just listened, without interrupting. "And you, Dad? How are things out there?" he asked. "I'm taking care of everything around here. I have a surprise for you, too." There was a brief silence on the other side. She laughed. "Oh, Dad, you didn't go to the garage, did you? I told you not to get tired." "Nothing much, just an adjustment, then you'll see." She laughed again, distracted. "Okay, I'll trust it. We'll be back Sunday night." "Good trip back." And we hang up. I spent a few seconds looking at the cell phone in my hand. What did she imagine I was doing? Painting wall, changing curtains. They had no idea. The house was already sold, the contract signed, the amount deposited directly into my account, the storage room with the belongings rented and locked. I had no plan for revenge. I had a plan of justice, and he was complete. In the following days, I got up early, read the newspaper on the bench in the square, talked to the janitor about soccer, went shopping at the corner market. In the evening, I prepared my own dinner, simple, but made by me. Loneliness did not weigh me down. It was, in fact, welcome, because it was the first chosen solitude I had experienced in a long time. And deep down, I knew this peace would not last. The storm was about to come, and I'd be standing when she knocked on the wrong door. On Friday morning, the sky was clear. One of those days when even the wind seems calm, as if you know that something important is going to happen. I grabbed my briefcase and went to the Central Registry Office in Winter Park. The receptionist recognized me from a previous visit and soon directed me to the room where everything would be made official. James Clark, a representative of Pinnacle Investment Holdings, was already there. He was a serious man with a low speech and an efficient manner. We shook hands firmly, and he thanked him for the speed with which everything was conducted. "Well-maintained property, Mr. Parker. It will be easy to turn it into a good investment." I shook my head, but said nothing, because for me, that wasn't just a sale. It was liberation. It was the end of a cycle in which I was just the invisible support of an ungrateful family. I signed the papers firmly, line by line. When I gave the last stroke on the transfer form, I felt like I had lifted a weight off my back. I handed James the keys, not only to the front door, but also to the back gate and garage. "Everything is working. Take good care of her," he said, and he replied with a respectful nod. I left the registry office in silence. There was no need for a party. This was an intimate funeral of something that died a long time ago, but that I was only now ready to bury. Before going to the warehouse, I spent one last time in the house. The new owner hadn't moved in yet, so it was empty, like a closed book. I entered slowly, leaving the door ajar. I walked down the corridor as if visiting an old friend in the hospital. The ground creaked the same way. The walls still bore the marks of life. I went to Sarah's old room. I opened the window, letting the light in. There was a peace in that light that hurt in my chest. I touched the wall next to the bed where she used to rest her books. There, for many years, she read in silence while I corrected tests or wrote grocery lists. There she smiled, coughed, slept, and left. You've always taken care of everyone, Charles, but don't forget to take care of yourself too. Her words came back with force, as if they had been whispered at that very moment. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, he smiles without sadness. I closed the window. I walked to the door. Before leaving, I looked at the room one last time. It was a farewell, but not a lament. It was liberation. I locked it calmly, went down the steps of the porch, got in the car, and headed to Sanford. At the warehouse, I was greeted by the manager, a nice woman named Monica. I handed her the access codes, the payment slips for the 6 months, and the labels that I organized myself. These boxes are toys. That part there are books and personal objects. This is about clothes. She looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and respect. And will all this stay here until someone comes to pick it up, or until it disappears? She didn't ask any more questions. He wished me good luck, and I thanked him. On the way out, I sat in the car seat and looked at the iron gate closing. Their belongings were now there, locked, stored, out of my way. Meanwhile, on my cell phone, messages arrived from time to time. Lauren sent photos of the children on the beach. Brad appeared in videos, trying to dance hula with his in-laws, laughing in the background. She said that the seafood dinner was divine, that the massages were a paradise, that they were thinking of extending the trip 2 more days. I read, and he did not answer. They didn't know, and honestly, they didn't even deserve to know yet. Because sometimes silence is the only sound that certain people deserve to hear. If this piece of my life can become a mirror or a hug for someone, will it help me to carry it forward? Like and subscribe here to the channel. It makes more difference than you think. Now we just had to wait. The contract was signed, the money deposited, the house delivered. The next move no longer depended on me. But when they landed in Orlando, the impact would be like a wave that no one saw forming. And it would all begin with a key that would no longer open any door. The night they landed was rainy, typical of Florida at this time of year. The sky was falling, as if he knew what was coming. I was sitting on the porch of my new apartment, sipping hot tea and listening to an old vinyl play Nat King Cole. The rain was beating on the leaves of the palm tree in front, and for the first time I felt no fear of what was to come. I felt calm. It was the kind of calm that only exists after the soul is tired of being stepped on. Meanwhile, 7 miles away, at 1847 Maple Street, a black Uber pulled slowly in front of the old house. Lauren got off first, with the children's backpack on her back and a Hawaiian necklace hanging around her neck. Brad came behind, carrying 2 suitcases. Margaret and Walter complained about the humidity and the long journey. The children, half sleepy, still wore airport sweatshirts with beach prints. They laughed, commented on the horrible dinner on the plane, and Lauren said, "I can't wait to take a shower at home and sleep in my bed." It was then that they noticed. The garage was occupied with 2 unknown cars, a white pickup truck and a grey sedan with the Pinnacle logo on the window. The lights in the house were on, but it wasn't the warm lighting Charles used to leave in the dim light. It was bright, cold, with a newly installed lowered ceiling. Lauren frowned. Brad pressed the garage control. Nothing. He tried again. No response. Lauren then pulled the handle of the front door. Locked. But not with the common lock. It was a fingerprint. A display glowed with a code. Brad rang the doorbell. The door opened partially, revealing a tall man in a dark suit, neutral expression. "Good night, can I help?" Lauren laughed awkwardly. "Sorry, we live here. He must be having some misunderstanding." The man watched her for a second. "I believe I'm wrong. This house is now owned by Pinnacle Investment Holdings. It was officially acquired 7 days ago. Document registered in a notary's office." Lauren froze. Brad stepped forward. "What do you mean, acquired? This house belongs to her father. He left us to take care of her. There must be some mistake." The man kept his tone calm. "The previous owner, Charles Parker, signed off on the sale and handed over possession. I'm James Clark, responsible for the transition, and you are not part of the new occupation. I'm going to ask them to leave." That's when Lauren tried to get in. He stepped forward, tried to push the door open. The man stood up and said, "If you insist, I'll be forced to call the police. This is invasion of property." Margaret panicked. "This is a kidnapping, a coup. The old man was deceived." Brad began screaming, demanding explanations, calling a lawyer who did not answer. Lauren pulled out her phone. He triggered a call at me. He called once, 2, 3, nothing. He tried again. Voicemail. And I, on the other side of town, watched the phone screen ring silently. I let him play until he stopped, because there are calls that do not deserve an answer. They deserve reflection. The rain thickened. I closed the window and sat down in the armchair. I took my notebook, the one where, for years, I recorded everything I gave in, everything I silenced. On the last page, I wrote only 3 words. The bill has arrived. There are moments in life when the pain of betrayal becomes a kind of fuel, not to get revenge, but to free himself. And if you've been listening to me this far, know what comes after that. It's the turning point of everything. Because the next call she would make, it would change the course of history, but not in the way she expected. The first calls arrived that same night, touch after touch, like a siren in the dark trying to tear me away from the peace I had finally earned. First there were 6 missed calls, then 12. In less than an hour it was already over 20. The messages started popping up. Long, broken audios, full of a despair that I had never heard come out of Lauren's mouth. "Dad, please call me. What's going on? This house is ours. We came back and there's a stranger living here. This is a mistake. It cannot be true. Answer me." I didn't answer. The next morning, Brad sent 3 short, direct messages. "You're going to regret it. I have a good lawyer. This is not going to stay like this." Laugh. For the first time in a long time, I really laughed, because only those who have never had anything real believe that they can take everything from someone. Margaret tried to be more emotional. "Charles, honey, this is just a misunderstanding. Go home, let's talk. The house is still yours, isn't it?" Walter, with his usual delicacy, sent a 30-second audio that said only, "If you think you're going to come out on top of this, you're very wrong. I solve it my way." I was silent. It is curious how silence sometimes speaks louder than any scream. They began to feel, for the first time, what I had felt for years: absence. And when you disappear from the life of someone who has always used you, the emptiness that remains is not nostalgia. It is desperation. 2 days later, I received an unexpected message from Elizabeth, my neighbor of decades. She said Lauren had knocked on her door. Desperate, wet with sweat, red eyes, her children in the car. Elizabeth, with the firmness that I know well, did not let in. She just handed her an envelope that I had left with her before I moved in. "If one day they come looking for me, deliver it. That's all." Elizabeth asked no questions. She was always wiser than a lot of young people out there. Lauren opened the envelope on the sidewalk. Inside was only one paper, folded carefully, handwritten unhurriedly in blue pen. Now each one takes care of what is his. No explanation, no swearing, no fight, that's all. And the reality stamped before them. The house was no longer theirs, and it never had been. There are memories that stay with us like a tattoo on the soul. I remember the first time Lauren walked into that house in a pink dress and bare feet, running on the wooden floor as if it were a park of her own. I remember the smell of paint from the first painting I made myself in that room when she turned 5. I remember every laugh that echoed off the walls that now no longer belonged to us, and that may never have been truly ours. Do you also have a memory like that? Something that marked you so much that even today it seems like it was yesterday? Tell me here in the comments. It can be a good, bitter memory, or just true. Sometimes we just need to share to heal. In the same envelope, in addition to the phrase, was the address of the warehouse. A small piece of paper with name, unit number, and the access code. Everything that was left of their lives in that house was there. Lauren didn't want to go on the same day. Brad was sent in. He went alone, in the late afternoon. When he opened the unit and saw all the boxes organized by name, each one labeled calmly, he must have understood that this was not an impulse. It was a plan, and the plan worked. But they still had an ace up their sleeve, and she came dressed in uniform with a badge on her chest. Only this time, I was the one who was prepared. The rental car stopped in front of Unit 314 of the depot. The blue sign with white letters trembled a little in the wind. Brad left first, looking around as if he expected to find some hidden camera, some journalist or policeman, anything that would explain that nonsense. Margaret and Walter were in the back seat, serious, silent. Lauren took a while to get down. It seemed like I still had hope that it was all a misunderstanding, that someone was going to come along and say, "Sorry, it was all a mistake, go home." But no one showed up. The warehouse manager greeted them with a professional smile. "Good afternoon. Are you the Parker family?" Lauren nodded, her voice barely coming out. "Yes. My father left the address." The woman typed something on the tablet and pointed to the side hallway. "Unit 314, it is now open. The payment is made for 6 months. He left clear instructions. Everything is separated by name. You can come in." Brad walked in front, shuffling his feet. The metal door was even ajar. He pushed slowly. A smell of paper, wood, and paste filled the air. It wasn't the smell of mold. It was the smell of the end. Inside, everything was impeccable. Cardboard boxes stacked with clear labels. Lauren, room. Brad, office. Margaret, kitchen, medicines. Walter, tools. Every corner of that cold unit held a piece of the life I had paid for. And now, I gave it back. Lauren knelt in front of one of the boxes. It opened carefully. Inside, children's toys, a picture frame with her graduation photo, 2 family albums. On top of it all, folded with precision, a handwritten note. She recognized the handwriting from afar. He read silently, "You have forgotten who I was." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't cry. He only closed the box with a dry crack, as if he wanted to silence something that was screaming inside. Margaret opened a suitcase with her medicines. Everything was there, the flasks lined up, the recipes stapled, even a small thermal bag that she used to carry insulin. He looked for a few seconds, then lowered his head and said nothing. Walter stood still, looking at the back of the unit. One of the boxes had his name on it. When he opened it, he saw the tools he had always left scattered around the garage. Keys, drill, spare parts he never used. But now they were there, piled up as evidence of a time that would not return. He was silent. For the first time, perhaps, without an opinion. Brad opened his box impatiently. Inside he found his cryptocurrency books, printed spreadsheets of old bets, and a blue folder with the draft of the deal that never worked out. All stacked carefully, as if I wanted to remind him, without saying a word, of everything he promised to be. And it never was. He closed the lid angrily, but didn't throw anything away. There in that icy warehouse, surrounded by the leftovers of what they once called a comfortable life, they understood. It wasn't about money, it wasn't about home. It was about value, about what you do with the love you receive, about how far you push someone before they learn to push back. There was no screaming, no fighting, only closed boxes, downcast eyes, and a silence that hurt more than any words. And it was only then that the phone rang. But this time, it wasn't mine. It was that of the police, and the surprise, It was still just beginning. I woke up to the sound of the sea. Not that rough storm sea, but a serene sound, like an old friend knocking on the door. My new balcony, here in Clearwater, faces west. Every late afternoon, the sky lights up with orange, pink, gold. And for a few minutes, it seems that time stops. My apartment is small, it's true, 2 rooms and an open kitchen. But after everything I've experienced, I've discovered that true wealth is in what stays silent with us. Here, there are no footsteps downstairs, no slamming doors, no voices calling me to solve another problem that wasn't mine. There's fresh coffee made by myself, unhurried, and the smell of it filling the room as the light comes in through the curtains. I joined a book club at the local library. There were 6 of us at the beginning, now we are 10, all with their stories, their losses, their secrets. It's curious how, after 60, we learn to really listen. I walk with Gerald, a widower like me, every afternoon. He lost his wife 3 years ago and says he still talks to her at sunset. I understand. Sometimes I do the same with Sarah. She may not even know it, but she is still my company on long nights. I received a letter yesterday from a former student named Martin. He said that he remembers my math classes to this day, and that because of me, he chose to be a teacher. I kept this letter as if it were a medal. I also received a box of flowers from Lisa Turner, a classmate at the school where I worked for almost 20 years. You deserve peace, the note said. Peace, a word that once seemed distant, but now fits right in my pocket of my day. Here, I don't have to lock the door in fear. I don't need to pretend I'm fine while being pushed to the corner inside my own house. Here, I am the owner of my time, my bed, my routine, and that, for someone like me, is worth more than any inheritance. No. There are people who think that freedom comes with noise, partying, expensive travel. But true freedom is coffee brewed calmly, uninterrupted sunsets and silence that doesn't hurt. I relearned how to live, but not everything is in the past, because sometimes, even living light, the past decides to knock on the door, and the doorbell would ring very soon. The phone rang at 10:47 a.m. I was peeling an orange, one of those Florida sweets, sitting on the porch with my feet outstretched on a wicker chair. The number was unknown, but something in the back of my stomach told me that I knew who it was. I let it ring 3 times before answering. "Hello," I said calmly. On the other side, a trembling breath. And then the voice that I carried in my lap, that I cradled with silly songs when I had colic, that I protected even from what she herself did not see, collapsed. "Dad, it's me, Lauren." Silence. "Dad, please don't hang up. Listen to me. I know we made a mistake. I know. It was awesome. I just wanted to protect you. We thought it was the best. That you were getting tired, you know? The house was very big. We didn't think straight. I didn't think about it. But you're my father. I can't imagine my life like this without you, without your voice, without his presence. Forgive me. We just wanted the best for you." I listened. Her every word was like a drop in an empty bucket. It fell, but it didn't fill anything anymore. And you know, there are requests for forgiveness that do not arrive, because forgiveness sometimes needs to come before the wound, not after it has already become a scar. I took a deep breath. I didn't scream, I didn't cry. I only answered, with the same serenity with which I now speak to you, "The best for me, it would have been to be included." And I hung up. After a few minutes, the phone rang again. It was Brad. Answered. He started out calm, trying to play the rational man. He said that I was exaggerating, that everything was misunderstood, that the house was too big for me. Then his voice changed. Screamed. He called it ingratitude. He said that this would end up in court. He spoke of the pain of the children, the embarrassment with the in-laws. I listened as far as I could. When he said, "You have no right to do this to your own family," I just replied, "I didn't. You did it." And I blocked the number. No, there are things that we live and keep, but maybe by telling we help another heart to breathe. If you're here listening to me, share this story. Like this video and subscribe. Let's make this story reach those who need to hear what dignity. There is no age. The silence after that was different. It was not empty, it was full. Because when we stop accepting crumbs, the hunger to be respected finally passes. But there was still one last scene. And it wasn't going to happen on the phone. It was going to be face to face. The following week I went to Tampa. I took the 9:20 a.m. bus, sat by the window, and took with me only a brown leather briefcase with some folded papers. The path there is quiet, surrounded by trees and memories. I passed in front of places where Sarah used to work as a volunteer, one in particular, the Golden Days Home, where she taught reading classes to the elderly. I picked her up myself some afternoons and waited in the garden while she read in that calm tone of voice that seemed to soothe even the stones on the ground. I entered with firm steps. The receptionist, a young woman named Melinda, smiled and recognized me from the previous call. "You're Charles Parker, aren't you? We are waiting." Yes, he took me to the director of the institution, who received me with a respectful hug. We talked for almost an hour. I showed the documents, explained the destination I would like to give to that money. He said, "I don't want signs with my name on it. Only one room, in honor of those who really knew how to care." And so, the Sarah Parker Room was born, a space for reading and resting in the heart of the asylum, with comfortable armchairs, new books, large windows, a place that I'm sure would make her smile. On the way back, I stopped by the library in my neighborhood. I bought more than 100 new books to donate, hand-picked titles, classics and novels, stories that speak of a new beginning. The librarian asked me, "May I ask why you are donating all this?" I just answered, "Because someone once taught me that whoever has love shares. Who has a wound, it teaches not to cause." Oh, and there's one more thing that perhaps few know. I opened an account in the name of my eldest granddaughter, Emily, the one who, on the eve of the trip, hugged me tight and said, "I'm going to miss you, Grandpa. Take a picture of your pancake to send me." She didn't know it, but that gesture held me on a day when I almost gave up believing. I left an amount saved for her, with clear instructions. It will only be accessed when she turns 18. No Lauren name, no interference. Only her. Because true love, we recognize it in the look, not in the last name. The house they wanted became words, printed in books that now cherish wrinkled and lonely hands. The money they wanted to control became a quilt of donations and seeds of hope. The inheritance they have imagined so much dissolved into the invisible, and it's curious how sometimes what you don't see, it is the one that weighs the most. You know, if you've come this far with me, go on. The most remarkable moment in this story is yet to come. There are things that can only be said with the eyes, and they were about to meet me. The sun had already set when Lauren, Brad, and the children arrived at the Blue Horizon Motel, one of those roadside motels with old carpet, cigarette smells in the hallways, and a reception with armored glass. The rental car, which was already past the return deadline, had an almost dry tank. Brad argued with the attendant about the daily rate, but ended up accepting what he had. A double bed, 2 mattresses on the floor, and an air conditioner that made more noise than freshness. Margaret and Walter, after much debate, agreed to go to the home of a distant cousin in Kissimmee, a man they hadn't spoken to in years, but who still opened the door. There in the cramped room of the motel, Lauren looked at the damp ceiling and thought of her room, the same one where she grew up. He thought of the frames of his childhood, of the old furniture lovingly restored, of the smell of the coffee that his father prepared in the morning. Everything fell apart so fast that it seemed like a dream, but it wasn't. It was the price. She tried to rent an apartment, but the income was not enough. Brad's name was committed to old debts, cards, bets, unbacked loans. One broker suggested they look for a room on Airbnb, but even that required an advance deposit. Brad, in the middle of this, lost the chance for an interview. The email with the summons went unanswered for 3 days. He had no cell phone, no Wi-Fi, and the old number had already been deactivated. When he called, he heard, "Unfortunately, already filled in." Their daughter Emily asked quietly that night, "Mom, why can't we go back to Grandpa's house?" Lauren swallowed. He did not answer. There was no more answer. I had nothing more to pretend. Shame stuck to the skin like sweat. The silence between her and Brad turned to anger. Each one remembered a moment when they could have done it differently. But now it was too late. Charles, on the other hand, remained invisible, but not by forgetfulness, by choice, because there are times when it disappears. It is the loudest cry of dignity, and when they least expected it, fate still had one more lesson to give. I sat at my balcony table, in front of the worn-out cover diary, pen in hand, and the sun coming in through the blinds, as if it wanted to illuminate every word I was about to write. I ran my fingers over the smooth surface, took a deep breath, and started. I spent 5 years being a home for those who only saw me as a ladder. They called me old, useless, but I went to the ceiling. I was a shelter. The words came out slowly, each carrying memories that still hurt, but now had meaning. I remembered the nights Lauren would arrive with the kids, Brad racking his brains with bills and loans, Margaret and Walter coming in as if they owned everything. I let him. I always did. Yellowed sheets mixed with the papers I had kept since Sarah's death. She would have given me that look of soft reproach, the one that said, "Don't forget you, Charles." And I never forgot it. During all those years, I was generous to the point of being exploited. I gave food, shelter, advice, laughter, and tears, but I didn't give them what I needed, respect. And I wasn't able to tell the difference until listening, watching, and waiting taught me the most valuable lesson. I wrote about the sale of the house, about the papers given to Zachary Allen, about the cash buyers who paid more than I imagined. I described the boxes in the warehouse, each item labeled, each memory carefully ordered. They couldn't touch anything else I built, not even what I had saved for their granddaughter. A sense of quiet justice filled my chest, and the anger that had once bubbled up turned into an almost religious calm. The lines lengthened in the diary. Today I learned that not every family is by blood. Sometimes the real family is the neighbors who respect you, the colleagues who listen to you, or even the silence that gives you back your peace. Each word was a reflection of my new self, of the maturity acquired at the cost of pain and patience. The empty house, the money redirected, the books donated, the Sarah Parker room, it all fit into a constellation of choices I made without anyone knowing, without anyone noticing. The feeling was one of plenitude, not victory. The victory would have been to allow me to feel freedom, and that I had now. Sarah's memories came softly. I remembered her laughter in the garden, the way she corrected my formulas on the blackboard, the words whispered in my ear on long nights. The good you do is seed, Charles. One day it sprouts, even if in another garden. I smiled, feeling the warmth of the memory as if she were there with me. And it's true, because even though Lauren and Brad never learned to appreciate it, my kindness didn't disappear. It multiplied in books, in children learning, in elderly people in foster care. I closed the journal carefully, put the pen on top, and looked at the horizon. The sea reflected the sky, and the breeze brought the perfume of salt mixed with the smell of freshly cut grass. I felt each muscle relax. For the first time in a long time, there was no fear, there was no expectation of disrespect, there was no charge, just the feeling of having done what was right, the way I always could, the way I always knew. And as I watched the sunset, I realized that the real inheritance I left was not in boxes, nor in money, nor in walls that they thought mine. I was in the peace I found, in the memories I decided to protect, and in the certainty that I learned to value myself. I learned that generosity does not mean being used, that love does not mean losing oneself, and that sometimes it is necessary to let some gardens grow without the presence of certain hands, so that they bloom in the right way. The final page of the diary was marked with Sarah's phrase, the one I have never forgotten: "The good you do is seed. One day it sprouts, even if in another garden." And in that instant, I realized that my life, with all the mistakes and losses, could still flourish, that my story now told could inspire anyone who was listening or reading. That dignity is a silent conquest, and that the most beautiful justice is the one we plant in our own hearts. But one question remained, subtle and unsettling, as I gazed at the sky tinged with red and orange. How many more times in life will we need to learn that protecting one's own peace is worth more than any pretend hug? And I knew that some lessons are only completed when we finally allow ourselves to breathe alone in our own garden. I walk along the beach barefoot, feeling the warm sand beneath my wrinkled, wet feet, and watch the sun slowly dip into the horizon, tinting the sky orange, pink, and gold, as if it's painting a portrait just for me. The cell phone vibrates in the pocket. 46 unanswered calls flash on the screen, but I don't ring. I don't need to. There are no more demands, no more haste, no pain. Only the clarity that everything that should be mine, my dignity, my freedom, my memory, is intact. Lauren and Brad, Walter and Margaret, each found their way back to the reality they built with their own choices, but now far from what they believed belonged to them. I, in turn, found true peace. Walking through the shallow sea, I feel the water wrapping around my ankles, and the salty breeze reminds me that every decision, every silence, every gesture of care, even when ignored or despised, builds the story that we really leave to the world. The lesson I carry is simple but powerful. Generosity is not measured by immediate return. Love is not to be confused with submission, and the presence we offer can be more valuable when directed to those who really recognize and respect. I learned that sometimes moving away from those who only see us as a resource is the greatest act of self-care and wisdom we can have, and that time teaches us that absence is also a form of presence. And if you are there with me, sharing this moment, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for following me here. Each like is like a hug that warms and supports this channel. Each subscription is like an invitation to come back for the next coffee, to sit with me and listen to more stories of life, of learning, of silent strength. Leave it in the comments of which city you are watching so we can create a corner of connection where each experience and each memory meets. And don't forget to ring the bell so you don't miss out when the coffee is brewed again. And we'll continue to share moments that inspire and teach. Don't go away yet. Listen to the next true story that will appear on the screen. Always remember, each wrinkle tells a story, and each story carries a strength. Watch the next video here on the channel with another incredible story. Today, I close my eyes and smile, whole, knowing that silence was my voice and absence, my justice. And so, each step in the sand reminds me that life, in the end, is measured not by what is taken from us, but by what we manage to preserve of ourselves.